Aquí nos quedamos a dormir, a comer y pues aquí pasamos el día, como el quien dice.
Junto a la de ella, decenas de carpas más donde migrantes cocinan afuera, duermen en el piso en colchones inflables y se duchan al aire libre en Randall's Island, donde está el refugio migrante más grande de la ciudad.
Sería bueno, por más que sea, de que aunque sea los ayudaran a sacar los papeles y no fuera tan difícil.
Ya se nos venció todo y bueno, no tenemos para dónde ir. A mí no me llegó el permiso de trabajo, no me ha llegado socio.
Hello everyone. Well, we haven't done one of these in a while, but it's true. There's a major situation happening in New York right now. So much so that the Spanish network did 3 reports on this matter. And that's because the migrants are losing their mail after getting kicked out from the shelters. So in essence, we have a migrant mail crisis on our hands. It's extremely concerning, as you can imagine. So I will go ahead and give you the translation so that you can keep informed with what's happening, since the mainstream media will never show you a report like this. It goes to show that the migrants will keep complaining no matter what. And it highlights the incompetence of New York officials. Speaking of incompetence, before we start, I would like to address this.
The one thing I know for sure now is I am not voting for Trump under any circumstances. If he's the only person on the ballot, I'm not voting for Trump because I know him too well. And he is wholly unfit to be president of the United States in every way you can think of.
You saw someone, and I think Sonny said this earlier, you saw someone who's exquisitely well prepared and somebody who was not.
President came on that stage, she reached for his hand and she was almost behind his podium because they were clearly not going to meet in the middle. Do you think that set the tone for the night? Because I thought that was such an amazing move.
Threw him off.
Look,
Yeah.
if she threw him off, then he's even stupider than some people think. She did what she had to do.
Yes, she did.
Which was, she's the lesser known person with the lesser profile. She needed to show those undecided voters that she belonged on that stage.
Right.
And last night she showed she belonged on the stage. And
Wow, former governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie, is a heavily bitter man. No pun. But he's mad that he couldn't beat President Trump in the primaries. Hell, he couldn't even come close to the first, second, or third place. He's a failed governor, and he's the perfect example of why just because you're a Republican, and I know that he qualifies as a rhino, but he's still a Republican, doesn't mean that you're any good. I mean, between him and Governor Murphy, they have single-handedly made the state of New Jersey completely unaffordable for most of the middle class. New Jersey has the highest property tax rate in the country. Additionally, it has the highest move-out rate in America. And I know because I'm part of those statistics. I used to live in New Jersey and I couldn't wait to get out. I'm glad I did. I'm thriving and extremely happy in my new, beautiful state of Nevada. But Chris Christie is not memorable. He hasn't done anything great for the country or New Jersey. The only way he's seen or remembered is if he's bashing President Trump or kissing Obama's ass.
And I don't trust President Obama with our records. I know you gave him a big hug, and if you want to give him a big hug again, go right ahead.
And there's that one time that Alex Jones made fun of him.
oh God, I don't think I've ever laughed this hard on air. Oh my God, it's so ridiculous.
And then that one time that he jumped into that pool. I kid. It's all AI, of course. Shame on me. He's a typical two-faced politician, and he ought to be ashamed of himself for finalizing his political career in such a pathetic manner. Anyhow, guys, it's time to discuss the current delicate situation in New York. This is troubling and we must address it. So, migrants complaining again in New York. We've lost our mail. How dare you, New York? Let's get started.
Listen.
right, guys, so let's start with the numbers. On this report, the journalist says having access to your correspondence has been extremely challenging for many migrants here in New York. Per New York officials, there are around 64,000 asylum seekers sheltered in the city. Furthermore, between shelters, hotels, and churches, there are over 200 shelters available. He says the challenge is New York's policy that indicates that migrants have to reapply for shelter between 30 to 60 days. As a result, migrants will have to change their address, and this makes it complicated for them to have access to their mail. At last, according to New York officials, over 210,000 migrants have passed through the shelters of New York. That's what he said, but I would say over 210,000 migrants have taken advantage of the stupid government of New York. Am I being too harsh for calling the New York officials stupid for using American taxpayer money on non-American citizens? If I'm being too harsh, let me know. All right, let's move on. Okay, so for this one, the journalist says, for Brenda's children, this is the perfect spot. They're able to run, play, and get around with their scooter. But for Brenda herself, this small tent city is the only home she has for her 4 children. Then Brenda, the migrant, says, this is where we sleep, we eat, and get by, if you will. The journalist proceeds. Along with Brenda's tent, there are dozens of other tents where migrants cook outdoors. They sleep on the floor and on inflatable beds, and they even shower outdoors as well. This is all happening, she says, in Randall's Island, where we have the largest migrant shelter in the city. According to Brenda, they have been living here for a month, and her husband were kicked out of the shelter because they exceeded the 60-day limit and haven't been able to find a shelter where the 6 of them can be together. Brenda says it would be great if they can help us by giving us the papers, and things weren't this difficult. The journalist continues, due to security concerns, some of them did not want to show their face. So then we have this other migrant who says, everything is expired and we have nowhere else to go. I haven't received my work permit or my social, he says, and he's upset about it. The journalist says that there are organizations that are complaining about the situation, but we know those are the NGOs, right? So I'll just call them NGOs. So the NGOs claim that due to the lack of information and access, the newcomers are unable to become independent, and that's the problem. So you have Power Malu, who seems to be a member of one of these NGOs, and he says the following: we are fighting with the city so that they understand how important it is for people to receive their mail, but they continue to move them around. Then the journalist jumps in and says, NYC's mayor responded to the current problem that's been escalating at a rapid pace. He said, it's not always pretty and it's not always perfect, but we are managing the crisis the best we can. The journalist is telling us that there are many reasons why these migrants have decided to live in these tents, which are right outside of the New York City shelters that have been set up for around 65,000 new migrants. Some say the reason they left is because the shelter is too far away from their jobs, or they just cannot afford a rent anywhere, or violence. This migrant who does not want to show his face says there's always a problem there and fighting. It's not what we thought. It's a lot of migrants here. And so that makes our current situation difficult. The journalist states, meanwhile, in Brooklyn, New York, migrants can be seen sleeping on cardboard boxes or in the parks and under bridges while they wait for a work permit or to re-enter the shelter system. Amazing. Import massive numbers of poverty and end up with more poverty? Who would have thought about that one? Anyway, let's continue with the final report. This migrant says, I had my fingerprints appointment and I received the correspondence 2 weeks after. The journalist says Ibo's complaint is shared by a lot of migrants who live in the 200 plus shelters in New York City, which includes important immigration documents, among other things. Ileani, the migrant, says, for instance, I paid my taxes last year and I didn't get the second check. So the journalist asks, where is the other check? Well, it was lost. The journalist proceeds from social security numbers to work permits that perhaps would allow them to become independent and allow them to legally work, make up a lot of these documents that have now been lost. That's according to the NGOs that support these families. And they tell us that sometimes these NGOs lend them their personal home address. And here is Power Malu again, the member of one of these NGOs. He says, we also have offices that are receiving correspondence for these migrants. But the city should have some form of center that everyone could use as a home address, especially if they will continue to move these migrants around every time. The same journalist says that the main problem here is that the migrants have to leave the shelters after 60 days. And so within that time frame, they have to find another place to live and change their address, which they say it's extremely complicated. These limits were imposed by the city, and they tell us that they have a high regard for the migrants' mail. Similarly, the migrants are able to pick their mail up even after they were transferred, and they alert the migrants about pending mail when they are transferred to another shelter. On the other hand, the migrants say that it is complicated to get this mail back. And according to them, they are unfamiliar with such system. Ibo, the migrant, says, so for example, we have an account with ICE. So ICE gives us a notification that we have pending mail in the shelter that you're registered with. And that's where we show them, say, hey, ICE is telling us that we have pending mail, and this is the address that I put down. But the shelter tells us, nope, you have no mail. The journalist finalizes the report by saying that the only current solution is for them to go to the reunification center at the Roosevelt Hotel in New York or seek assistance from the NGOs. Okay, guys, so let's do the math real quick. Migrant crosses over the border illegally, heads towards a sanctuary city because they know they will be protected there. Upon arrival, they are broke and seek assistance at a shelter. Then they put that shelter as their home address. And because a shelter is not going to last forever, after they get kicked out, they lose their mail. Then the migrant complains to the Spanish networks. And then the Spanish networks and the NGOs go after the city. And the city is incompetent to begin with because they allowed this from day one. Does that make sense? I think it does. Smash the like button, subscribe, share this video with at least one person. And let me know what you think in the comment section below. I will see you guys next time.